This is our 45 White Oak project, and today we're breaking down one of the most controversial details of Peterson cover brick cladding. This isn't just any brick, this is a hand-laid, dry stack, precision cut, and designed to give this home a seamless, modern look that's going to blow your mind. Most people think that brick is just brick, but this is next level craftsmanship, and I'm taking you behind the scenes to show exactly how we made this happen. From the custom layout to the insane precision on the joints, this took hundreds of hours to perfect, and we're about to break it all down, so let's get into it. Let's take it back to the basics of what we're dealing with on the wall. First and foremost, we have our exterior sheathing, 1/2-inch plywood WRB. That is our waterproofing layer. On top of that, we have our 5 inches of comfort board, and then we have our rain screen. Our rain screen is 2x4s screwed back to our framing, and then our 2x2s that sit here, and the Peterson cover brick hangs on, and you can peek up there how everything hangs on it in a shingle formation. And just to touch on real quick, we have our insect and rodent screen down below here, which is a heavy gauge metal to prevent anything from working its way up into that cavity, which I know is a question. But before we get to the brick, one of the things that we had to do is install these stainless steel fins. And we went with a essentially mill finish stainless, so there's no brush finishing on this. And one of the concerns that we had when we were fabricating these, White Sheet Metal actually made these for us, is that when they would go through the machining process, they would scratch and potentially mar up the finish. You can see some scratching, but essentially they were able to source material that had a protective coating on it. So while they were manufacturing these, it prevented it from being overly scratched. But once it's on site, the imperfectness of scratching and things like that will eventually dull over time because there is no finish on this stainless, which will look really nice. If we step over here, you can see how only a very little bit of that stainless ends up exposed, and over time, as this dulls, it will look more and more beautiful. But let's talk about what we have on the wall here. This is a Peterson cover brick. It's a masonry product. They are made in a C formation. This is what hangs on the wall on that cladding, and then what they do is they actually manufacture these holes in the top of the shingle. You're only required to fill 2 of them with a fastener, which we're using screws on that wood, but they cast a bunch of them to give you the ability to screw it when you cut them into shorter lengths rather than having to come back and screw them. A lot of you guys had a question on another video about these screws not hitting the wood. They actually come down through on an angle, so your screw comes down and it hits that 2x2 every time. We're not blasting those screws tight. They're put in and they're left a 1/16 or an 1/8 inch proud, so that shingle has some movement in it. So as that pressure treated might move through the seasons or as it dries out, you're not getting these shingles completely tight. Let's address the question about what happens if one of these breaks. It's going to take a lot for something like this to break. You know, you're about 3/4 of an inch thick. Hit this with a pretty strong impact, and it's going to hold up and be pretty robust. I did take a hammer to the dead center and smash one, and of course it broke. That's a rare case. If you were to have to replace these, I'm not going to say it's the easiest thing to do, but what you would essentially have to do is you'd take a shim and you'd peel this one away from the wall and this one away from the wall, and you'd get up and you'd slice off the 2 screw heads, and you'd essentially be able to pull this one off of the 2x2, pull it down and put a new one up and in. And realistically, you're probably not going to be able to you're not going to be able to get a fastener in the replacement one. But you know, these are going to prevent that from falling out. You'll see actually in some details in a future video where we leave some of them without fasteners because we're going to actually water jet some venting through those, and we want to be able to remove that in the future. Right now, our cladding comes down about 18 inches above the grade. Our finish grade is about 6 inches below bottom of shingle. So we'll detail the exposed rock wool with a stucco. We have some rock wool to fill in here. You have this exposed stucco that's set back. The other thing about the product and the material is that it kind of plays with this New England inspired architecture with the brick homes that are familiar around Wellesley. We have masonry homes all around Wellesley, but it does it in a more modern way. As we put this shingle up, it continues to nestle the home into its environment around here. And the more we clad the front of this house, the more that home really starts to settle in. You'll see around the back how it's really starting to feel complete. But from a detailing perspective, there's a couple things going on. Vincent and his team at Of Possible, everything has been detailed, so there's no notching. You'll see that this course here lands above the window there, comes straight across, and then it lands above the ceiling, or right at the ceiling for this outdoor deck. As you continue all the way up where the coursing stops here, that course stops right where the windowsill will be. And that windowsill will actually be fabricated with stainless steel to match the fins, and then come over the edge and essentially cap where those screw heads are, leaving the same exposure that you have as you work your way up the wall. And then if you can imagine, when you go up to the top of the window, it's gonna do the same thing. Then up to the gutter line, we're actually using a extruded aluminum gutter made by Duragutter. That will sit actually inside of the, not the wall cavity, but the cladding cavity, which is part of that rain screen. If you look up there, you actually can see some of the 2x4s on the flat, and then you can envision that that gutter will sit in there. But as that coursing makes its way up, it will stop and again have a stainless steel cap that rolls it into the gutter. It really forces us to be very accurate in the framing side of this to prevent any of that coursing layout to be interrupted or having to notch around these openings. But in the final product, you can see how beautiful it really is. Typically what you're seeing with this product is a butt joint here, and what they do is kind of a reverse detail where they're taking a piece of angle iron and then your shingle lands on either side. That's a pretty typical detail for the cover brick. We've seen some of the detailing on their website where they do miter everything together, but I've not seen where they've actually mitered against a piece of metal like this. This is a detail that we worked on really early. The shingle has a lot of undulation to it. They're all handmade. You're getting a lot of shadow across them, but then you have this really machine-like finish, really straight piece of metal. The guys did a great job streamlining every piece to make sure that we are working off of a straight piece of metal. Plays with that handmade versus machine made. And speaking of which, you'll notice some of these cuts are further away, some are tight. It's just a product of these shingles being handmade, and more so the fact that essentially you have a jig set up on a wet saw. So when we're pushing those shingles through, every one of them is being cut on a 45-degree miter, and then that bevel is set up for the bevel of the shingle. But you can see that this shingle here is slightly different than this one, so you're getting the undulation, so which leads to, if you're pushing every one through the same jig, you're getting some of these gaps. Over here you'll actually see a detail for the corner, how these shingles come around and then line up with one another. As you make your way kind of from the side and look around, you get this really straight line of stainless steel and then right back to the shingle. Early on, a possible team had said, hey, I have this crazy idea that I'd love to pitch, and it's this product made by Peterson Tegl, and it's this cover brick. And we dug into it. I was really inspired by some of the projects that they had on their website, and when we ordered the samples and saw the scale of it, it was one of those things that we knew would be an expensive detail. This is not an inexpensive product. It's not an inexpensive install, or frankly, even an inexpensive system because of the labor and the man hours that it requires to accomplish this. But we're talking about a bespoke, custom luxury home here. This is multiples of millions of dollars that we will sell this property for. And it really was this opportunity to build something that was completely uncompromised and really celebrated the architecture of the home. Despite being an expensive material, it's extremely robust and enduring in the sense that this material will require no maintenance. There's no mortar. It is a dry hung masonry product that will last hundreds of years. And it's done so on a rain screen cladding system that, yes, it is wood, it is pressure treated, but it is also a ventilated cavity. So we're gonna have an opportunity where any moisture that makes its way back behind these shingles is going to dry out. But it is beautiful. It is masonry, which is respectful of the architecture around here, but installed in a way that is more modern and really celebrates this home for all that it is. If you're interested in working with us, there's a form below you can fill out, schedule a 15-minute call to discuss that project, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, oh wow.
Oh, you're ripping mine off.
Wow.
Not the door.
The oil. The new hammer, dude, don't scrap it. You can use it. It's a cheap hammer.
Like a direct hit.
A direct, yeah. I mean, you'd have to do that. And with the clips on there.